All right, kids, it's that time. The run is over. Welcome to a basement in Chicago. That's where I'm coming to you from. And first off, I want to say congratulations to all you Vegas fans and congrats to the Golden Knights. This doesn't happen. And it was an epic run, it was an epic season. And you just gotta, I guess, try to, well, it was pretty much immediate for me. I was able to, well, maybe not immediate. But I was able to push aside kind of the bitterness. I will say one salty thing, just one piece of saltiness before Matt hops on. I know Matt's been waiting forever. Melissa, tell Matt that I'm ready to go here as we talk about the end of the Golden Knights inaugural season. I guess you have to put this in perspective, and I know it's going to take some time. It'll take some time. It's going to take a season where the Golden Knights aren't so good to really get the perspective of how good this season was. I will say, and we all know this, the Golden Knights series, boy, what a time to play their worst four games of the season. Really the only stretch that I can see that compares to what this team did in the Stanley Cup final is when they played the Minnesota Wild. That's the only team in the NHL that the Golden Knights struggled against consistently. They didn't do it against Washington in the regular season. They do it in the postseason though, and that's that. My one piece of saltiness. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the where to hold the camera here. My one piece of saltiness. If I was there, and I'm not there, for those of you, that wondering why, just for any reason, I'm in Chicago. Had a death in the family and ended up here during Game 5. So my Uncle Joe passed away. He's a huge sports fan. Part of the reason why I'm as passionate about sports as I am. So decided, and it was a pretty easy decision to come out here and miss Game 5. I was keeping my fingers crossed for a Game 7 back in Vegas. Hoping and just assuming that Vegas would, win Game 5. I mean, how would they not win Game 5? But clearly we see how they didn't win Game 5. I mean, just the worst stretch of 4 games all season. And if I had a vote for the Conn Smythe, if I was there, I would have. Thank you, Michael. If I had a vote, I would have given the vote to the Conn Smythe to the Vegas Golden Knights defense because, man, they gift-wrapped this thing to to the Washington Capitals. We know their defense is so much better than what they played. I mean, mistake after mistake after mistake, bad passing. Really to break this down, and I don't want to do too much because, the season's over. I mean, it was atrocious passing, and even in Game 5, man, they just could not handle the puck. You had Tatar that had an excellent chance. I believe it was a 2-on-1, and just couldn't handle that puck, or it was a 3-on-2, and he didn't do a very good job there. The passing was off when you think about the last 30 seconds, right? And I don't know who was trying to pass to who, but there was that pass kind of from the right side of the ice towards the center. Somebody was open, one of the defensemen, and the pass was just completely behind whoever it was. Oh, there's Matt. Hey, Matt. Sorry to keep you waiting. We'll bring you on. Tough to swallow, clearly. So, I mean, I want all of you to chime in and kind of tell us how you feel about this season. I mean, are you feeling salty? Are you upset at the way this team played? Or are you just, okay with it and you're already reflecting on the season? Hey, sorry to keep you waiting for so long, Matt. We both shaved. We thought it would change up the mojo. It did. Man, and it's just, you knew it. It was like, geez, can Vegas get a break? Because they got no breaks at all this series. And then finally you get a puck off a skate to go in, right, to tie it at 1. And then I can't remember, it was 2-1 Golden Knights or was it 2-1? I can't even remember, Matt. That's how my memory works. But Vegas got a couple breaks
No.
finally. They got breaks,
Yeah.
and we were thinking, hey, this is
1-1.
it. Oh, go ahead.
No, 1-1, and then Washington scored again pretty quickly. I think they scored 35 seconds after the Knights tied it at 1, and then the Knights got the second goal and then got the third goal with 28 seconds left in the third period. And that was actually, and I tweeted it out earlier, that was the first lead that the Knights had carried into a period in this entire series. It had either been tied or they were trailing at the end of every single period of this series. So it looked like they were in good shape, and man, the defense just let them down again. They just so many lapses on defense throughout the entire course of this series, where whether it was just overskating, just misplaying pucks, not getting not getting a stick down, not getting in the passing lanes, whatever it was. The defense just wasn't tight for Fleury, and it cost them two quick goals there in the third period, and they were never able to recover.
Yeah, and I said it before you came on. One, if I was there, I would have cast my Conn Smythe vote for the Vegas Golden Knights defense because they gift wrapped this. Really, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just we haven't seen this team play like this for this long a stretch all season long. It really was the worst stretch. And I just started to think, during the second period or whenever. I mean, it was during the second period when they started trailing. Maybe the Stanley Cup final is where the nerves finally set in or the tension finally set in, and this team just wasn't as loose as it was. I mean, we were in that locker room, and you can kind of give us some perspective here before Game 5. I mean, on the outside, what they're saying clearly is what they've been saying all year: never too high, never too low, and have fun with it. But maybe really on the inside, these guys just got tight, especially feeling a 3-1 deficit. They've had nothing to lose all season long, but maybe just a Stanley Cup final. Or it was just they met their match in the Washington Capitals, which I don't want to believe, but maybe it just was the truth.
I think that's probably more accurate, to be honest with you, John. They just got beat. I mean, again, the defense was terrible in the series, and they didn't play their best hockey. But I think you have to credit a lot of that to the Washington Capitals. They were the better team. They capitalized, no pun intended. They capitalized on every opportunity that the Knights gave them. They played Golden Knights hockey. I mean, really, that's the best way that you can accurately describe it. Is they played Golden Knights hockey for the last 4 games of this series. The first game was kind of a mess both ways. It wasn't clean. But after that, they beat the Knights to every loose puck. They were the more aggressive team. They looked like the faster team. Obviously, the hits were there, and they played better. They played a better version of what the Knights generally play, and really, the Knights were playing catch up for the entire series. I mean, they played from behind the majority of the time. Again, they didn't carry a lead into a single period until the third period of Game 5 when they're down 3-1 in the series. So you have to give the Capitals credit. It's not a case of the Knights just not showing up.
Right.
The Capitals forced a lot of that action.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 1,000%. Capitals just played better hockey. And, I mean, you look at the playoffs as a whole, Vegas gets to the Stanley Cup final by playing virtually mistake-free hockey for however many games it was, right? 12 wins, 3 losses, so for 15 games. And then all of a sudden, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, they crap the bed in the Stanley Cup final. First time all season, they lose 4 games straight. And I don't know, I think we talked about this a little bit after, I don't know which game it was, Matt, but just for the first time, I feel like Gerard Gallant got out-coached. Now, the execution on the ice wasn't very good, and maybe you can chalk it up to that, but I just feel like Barry Trotz just was more aggressive in his scheming. How Gallant always said, hey, we've got to play our game. And I wouldn't have strayed away from that if I was Gerard Gallant. I mean, certainly you got to play your game and play it better. But I feel like Trotz kind of came out with a game plan where the Capitals' forecheck was so much more aggressive all season or all series long versus Vegas. And I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but they're playing at the goal line. I mean, Vegas is behind its own net with the puck, and they're standing right in front of Fleury waiting for whoever it is to bring the puck out. Whereas Vegas, they were playing back at the Capitals' blue line, really didn't put any pressure on the forecheck. So I feel in that way, I don't know what happened. I don't know if Gallant purposely said, hey, let's not pressure as much. I mean, forechecking is what got them to the success they were in the season. But, I mean, is there any validity there, or am I just crazy?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if they were necessarily out-coached. I think the pressure that the Capitals put on them was with the skill level that they bring to the table. I mean, with Backstrom and Oshie and Ovechkin and Kuznetsov, there are just so many playmakers on that team that anytime that pressure got by the Knights, there was nothing they could do about it. They were able to recover against the Kings because they're not a very offensive-minded team. They were able to recover against the Sharks because they're really just not as skilled as what you saw here. And then with the Jets, and it's funny because Mike from Winnipeg, it was such a mirror image of what we saw in that Winnipeg series, where that first game, the home team came out on fire. They played really well. They kind of took control. and never let the other team really get into it. Although, they kind of went back and forth for the first two periods, and then the Knights ran away with it. And then after that, the Knights just took control in that series. They completely took control, and they just wouldn't allow the Jets to get into the series. The Knights never trailed in those final four games. You saw the exact opposite thing happen in this series, where once game two hit, I think what was it, 1-0 in the first period, and that was the last time the Knights led until late in the second period here in Game 5. I mean, the Capitals just completely took control of the series, and I think it's just a snowball. And Tony's going to love this because it started with that great save by Holtby against Tuck, but it's a snowball. Once that happened, and they weren't able to capitalize on a play that they have been capitalizing on all season long, they just couldn't quite get their footing going forward, and the Capitals kept building and building and building on that momentum and just buried the Knights.
Yeah, so now you call it, instead of a save, it definitely is the save. And I look at that, right? You look at that, and you look at the James Neal miss in Game 4, and you look at those two plays, and you could easily make the argument that the Golden Knights could have been up 3-1 going into Game 5 if they get those two goals. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how close, at least that's what hockey is, right? Again, Vegas got outplayed defensively constantly, but you look at those two plays, and you could make the argument it was a different series. And you bring up the Jets, and I'm glad you did. It felt like it fits and starts that Game 5 of this series felt like Game 5 of the Jets series, but in the opposite manner, where Vegas was
Yeah.
playing like Winnipeg in Game 5, where they just didn't want it until, again, that second period comes and the doors on scoring open up. And then I just felt like that the confidence would return, and it started to return, and it came back, and the team started playing loose. They started playing a little bit more relaxed. They started actually passing a little bit better. They were playing better defensively a little bit, to where they just played confident. And I figured, can't 20 minutes. Could they keep it up for 20 minutes? And they just couldn't do it. And that's that. You don't deserve to win the cup if you just can't shut the door like that. So again, as you said, I mean, all credit to the Capitals. I don't have any issues with giving them credit for this. You don't blame them for this. You can't blame the officials on anything, at least in Game 5. I mean, you could say the calls kind of maybe Vegas got hosed on a few penalty calls. Certainly the Capitals' ability and their power play, fantastic. I mean, what a power play that was.
Yeah.
And Vegas just couldn't adjust to it at all. But, now I just start thinking about, the year that was, Matt. And before we got on, I went through all my pictures, and I was just thinking about, following this team since day one. And I remember it was media day. And there was probably maybe a dozen, 15 media members there. There was nobody. And I was just going around. I just wanted to know one thing, how do you, what do you do when nobody thinks you're going to be a good team? Essentially is what I asked all the guys about. And they all had variations of the same answer. We just have to go out there and prove it. And clearly, they did all year long. It's just a shame. And that's what kind of rips my heart out, is that they saved their worst four games for the last four games of the season.
Yeah, I did the same thing, just kind of reflecting back on this amazing season. And I don't know if you saw any of Gallant talking after the game, and he said, in the next week or two, you'll start to look back and realize just how great this was, and it'll feel better, but right now it stings. And I think that kind of echoes the sentiment of the entire city right now. Um, when we go forward in the next couple of weeks here, and we look back on this incredible season, I mean, go back to opening night. I had tears in my eyes, and it had nothing to do with the ceremony. The ceremony was incredible, but after 39 years, seeing my team, my hometown team, come out on the ice got me choked up. And that's kind of how this season has been. It's been such a magical ride from game one in Dallas to the first home game and the ceremony all the way until game 5 tonight. We didn't get the storybook ending, but this has been the most incredible sports story of probably all of our lives. It's just been amazing. I mean, you being a Cubs fan, after a 108-year drought, you got to see the Cubs win the World Series. I'm sure that rivals this from start to finish. But without the storybook ending, it was about as good as it could possibly be. And I mean, guys, we're watching them skate around T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas with the Knights logo on the ice. They're skating around the Stanley Cup. Never in a million years did I think that we would see that happen in this city. We have a professional franchise in this city, and it's only the first, and it's just going to keep building with the NFL coming here. The NBA will probably be here. Now talks of the MLB possibly coming. It's only going to get better. If this is the beginning, my God, man, it's going to be fun.
That's true. Thanks again, everybody, for hopping on. I'm John. That's Matt, Sports Adrenaline Las Vegas. We're just kind of reminiscing on the season that was here, and we want your thoughts. I'll get to your comments in just a minute, but you're looking at two guys here, Vegas natives, and we're a little bit on the old side, right? Not that old, Matt. I'm 30. I'm closing in on 38. What are you, 40?
I'll be 40 in
Now,
November. Thank
there's
you.
not too many of us. There's at 40 in November. Great. Enjoy your 30s, both of us, while we can. There's not too
Yeah.
many in our age bracket. Now, we have a lot, certainly the youth out here. I mean, they're out in droves, but
Mhm.
guys our age, and you're a third-generation Las Vegan, is that right? Was your dad was born out here,
Third,
too?
my dad, who just hopped on a second ago, I
Yeah,
saw there in the comments. He just hopped on. He was born here. My grandfather was actually born here. My kids
that's
are born
crazy.
here. Even my wife born here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Vegas blood through and
Yeah,
through.
there's not too many of us, and I just say it's worth the wait. This wait that we've had all our lives, growing up and saying, why don't we have a team out here? Having to watch the Cubs lose all the time on WGN, and I did get spoiled. Now I got spoiled with Jordan and the Bulls in the '90s. So again, if you're hopping on late, I'm actually in Chicago. Normally, I would be at T-Mobile Arena right now for any game, but we had some unfortunate circumstance in my family. We had a death in my family, Uncle Joe, and had to run out here and pay respects to him. Great service, great guy. So it was a no-brainer for me. So I just assumed, Matt, if they were going to win Game 5, and I wasn't really sweating it at all. I'm like, I had a student there, Lupita, who actually told me she did relay just a lot of emotion in the locker room, very raw. So I had one of my students in the locker room by herself. I wasn't there to help her out, so I wonder how the experience was for her. But she said a lot of emotion. Guys didn't really say much
I'm
at all.
sure.
It was pretty raw. It is going to take some time for them to process. But I don't think it's really going to take any time other than what I just said, that is that they saved their worst 4 games for the Stanley Cup final. Now I'm over it already, to be honest with you. I'm over it. I mean, it sucks, but it's just what fun it was to be part of this and to get a firsthand account of everything. And I'm even going back to the season ticket drive. I was there day one, Matt, February of 2015, I think it was. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember. And I put my deposit down that day. And you can call me fanboy, Tony, all you want. But I was there day one with that team, and I actually did, I did a little freelance work for them. I was helping out just because I felt the duty. Just when this team was announced, and not the team, the ticket drive, I was like, I got to do everything I can to make sure this happens. So, employee one, Todd Pollock, he's VP of ticket sales. Actually, him and I got together, and I lent a hand where I could. So I feel a little bit of a part of this team, and I really don't talk about it too much. It was a lot of fun just to kind of get an inside look at this team going from one employee, which was Todd, to what it is now in just a couple short years. I mean, again, there's nothing that I don't think could equal it unless they actually ended up winning the cup.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that being, feeling like you're kind of tied to it in a different way. Um, as well as most people out there, this is sports adrenaline's kind of coming out party, right? We just got our show on the radio now, and we're still building. And with that, we were able to get credentialed to a handful of things, and I was able to be credentialed for a bunch of the games this season, and obviously be part of the locker room atmosphere for every practice. And to get to know these guys on a different level than just being a fan and sitting in the stands and cheering for them, it made a difference. It made it a little more personal. It definitely made it more fun. You see the guys on the ice, and you can talk to them after the game or after practice and get a little different kind of insight than what you would normally get as a fan. And being the first team in Vegas, I think it just made it that much more special for those of us that are natives. Um, it's going to be a fun ride, man. Now we're getting into. You said you're over it already. I'm not quite over it, but now we're going to get into the off season, right?
Yep.
This will be the first legitimate off season for them. Before they had to build an entire team. Now they can fill holes. They can find find
I'm on
pieces.
Facebook here. My dad just walked in. Dad, we're going
All
golfing
right. Hey,
tomorrow.
join in.
Yeah, Dad's
Tell
here.
them to join in.
Yeah, well, Dad's going to tell you about the defense and how terrible it was.
It was
Which,
horrible.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Horrible defense, and you can't win hockey games like that. I've been watching hockey since the '60s.
Dad's a little salty. He's a salty
Yeah,
Chicago fan.
I'm
So
telling you.
that's you
Yeah.
got me the golf club for tomorrow.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. Great. We're all
All
set.
right.
Tee time tomorrow. We're running out to the golf course. Cubs on Sat. I'm gonna make the transition really easily. Cubs on Saturday, so I'll be at Wrigley. Not that anybody cares right now, but I'll be wearing all
No,
my
not
Golden
at all.
Knights gear at Wrigley Field on Saturday.
Really?
I'm gonna
Nice.
make the
Good.
transition, so it'll be into Cub season. But Matt, the off season is going to be like a month,
Yeah.
if that. Right? You've got the NHL awards coming.
Free agency, you can start talking in the next week, right?
I mean, the season's
I
going to
think
be
that's
here
coming
before
up here
you
pretty
know it.
soon.
Yeah, no question. So,
Yeah.
want to?
Well, that's the thing
go ahead.
with going this deep into the playoffs is this is an extra 2 months of the season.
Yep.
I mean, training camp's going to start in August. You're looking at preseason in September, and then they're back on the ice playing meaningful games in October. I mean, it's a quick turnaround when you make a run this deep. So as much as it hurts, as sad as it is for everybody, you're hardly going to have time to cry about it. And boom, we're right back into the season, and you'll be back in T-Mobile going nuts.
Yeah, let's get to some comments. Sorry, we've just been, talking. I guess Matt and I needed to grieve a little bit. So this is venting
Wow.
for us. You can vent a little bit more. You can actually call in. We take calls, Sports Adrenaline Las Vegas, CBS Sports Radio, 11:40 a.m., 8 to 10 a.m. I will be calling in, probably from Wrigley Field, just so you know, Matt, for that. But let's get to some comments here. Nicholas Colvin talking about the offseason. Now they can get some defensive help. Yeah. You certainly look at that. Shea Theodore did play a little bit better. Shea had one really great play in the corner during that second period. It was like he forced a turnover, and I was like, oh, confidence rising in Shea. That was nice to see. But, yeah, I think defensive, what's the number one need? It has to be defensively, right, Matt?
Yeah, you have to bring in some defenders. I think they're going to look at that third line, fourth line offensive situation. Maybe try to find a couple more scorers in there. But you have to find some more defenders. I mean, Erik Karlsson, right? They tried to trade for him at the trade deadline. His name's still floating around out there. That's a big time player, big time defenseman with a great offensive mind to go with it. So. Who knows? I mean, Vegas has to be one of, if not the most attractive markets in the NHL right now. Not just because of the city that we live in and how easy it is to live here, no state tax, all of that. But you look at everybody that came through here and they got to experience this environment that T-Mobile presented every single night, and the pregame shows and the noise, the constant energy, and then every single player, coach, media personality that came through this city and got to experience T-Mobile for a hockey game raved about it, absolutely loved it. If you're a player looking for a destination and you look at a young team with a lot of talent, made a run at the Cup, a lot of draft picks in the next few years to have, and all those young guys that they already took in this last draft, it's a very attractive team to want to go play for and make another run next season. So don't be surprised if you see the Knights as another 100-plus point team next year.
We're saying Cup and 2, Matt. Forget Cup and 1. Cup and 2. You make some great points. More comments here. Robert Robles. Hey, not bad for a bunch of backups. Amen to that. Nicholas, again, I'm 38. That's not old. I don't know. I'm feeling kind of old. I think this season took off a couple years off my life. Justin Howard, I say refs blew it in Game 4. Yeah, again, there were some penalty calls, but the Knights just didn't play good hockey, and I was just hoping they could get through this game, just escape with a win, and then hit the reset button and come out with their hair on fire in Game 6. I was just, I just had my fingers crossed for that, thinking if they can just get one in the bag and turn the series around, man, it would have been something to see, but they just did not have it in them. And again, the
looked good for
Capitals
a while.
Played phenomenal, though. Kim saying great first season for the Knights and for Vegas, super start, no question. Michael Wynn, our boy Michael, Jets fan, future is bright in Vegas. Going back here, be proud, boys. Absolutely, very proud. Amazing season from Kerry. Robert saying congrats to the Caps, but I'm more impressed with the Knights' first year. I think, you know what, that's something to be said. And but good argument on both sides, because we met some Capitals fans, Matt, They've been through a lot this year as well, and it's a really similar story. Again, if you guys just kind of tuned in and got to know the Capitals during the Stanley Cup final, they battled injuries all season. They battled low expectations all season. They've also battled that 3-1 lead, right, Matt? We were hoping some doubt would creep into their head. They dealt with the injury to Kuznetsov in Game 2, so this is a good team, and a lot of people didn't think they were that good. Maybe they didn't play that well during the season, but they just rose up when it counted, and even battling back again in the playoffs. Down 2-0 to the Blue Jackets. Boy, you think about that. They're down 2-0 to the Blue Jackets in round 1. They get bounced.
And Holtby wasn't even in net for those 2 games.
Right.
They had benched him for those first 2 games of the playoffs, and then they go on a run.
Yeah.
Ovechkin was hot throughout the course of the playoffs. Played 200 feet hockey, which he hasn't been known to do. Very much just an offensive guy and phenomenal goal scorer, but played the full length of the ice throughout the course of the entire postseason, and it showed. And he deserved to raise the cup at the end, as much as it sucks for all of us. He was extremely deserving of that, and a long time coming. 13 years in the league, and finally got past Crosby, finally got past the Penguins, finally got past Fleury, and was able to raise that cup.
Really did enjoy the shenanigans pregame between Fleury and Ovechkin. That was fun. A little slashing.
It looked a little heated,
yeah,
didn't it?
It did.
Yeah,
it did. It was really good.
That was.
That's hockey, though. And granted, I haven't seen that ever before during warm-ups. I'm sure it's taken place, but the gamesmanship was fun. Again, I'm working backwards here. I'll jump ahead in a second. Carolyn O'Callahan, our defense is a mess. Yeah, Carolyn, agree with your assessment there. Good point, Matt. They played Knights hockey, the Caps. Yep, absolutely. Glenn saying, I've been a Flyers fan for years. If the Flyers or Knights couldn't win, at least it wasn't number 87. Oh, well, there you go. So no Sidney Crosby. I think he's thrilled about that.
Hate on those things, man.
Yeah, jumping ahead now. Robert, Cody Glass. Can't wait to see him on the ice. Absolutely. Again, I'm just going to...
Cody Glass, Nick Suzuki. Yep. There's some good ones coming up.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Robert, I watch Cody on the ice every day. This is from Michael Wynn, our boy, here in Winnipeg. He's working hard this spring. Great kid. My cousin, Kathy Svensson. Hey, Kathy, thanks for watching. Tiffany, my wife, she hasn't seen me in days, so this is the way she gets to see me. Caps had a lot of fans here tonight. They estimate 37% of the crowd. How do they get that percentage, 37% of the crowd? That sucks.
That was on somebody on the broadcast said that's what he estimated.
That's a nice round number.
There were a ton of fans there. I saw a lot of people on social media crying about it, and none of them were at the game. So really, you can't sit at home and complain about people not buying tickets and going to the game when you're at home not buying a ticket, not going to the game. You are in fact part of the problem if that's the case. I didn't necessarily have a problem with it because that's the environment that the Knights have played in this entire season. And some of the best environments in T-Mobile this year were when you had dueling fan bases in there. You always want to have more fans. You don't want to be outnumbered in your home arena. And it was close, Chicago, Detroit, teams like that. It was close a couple of times, but the Knights always had the higher numbers. And you could hear it today. The Caps fans were there, but the Knights fans were louder. Just couldn't get it done. It really had nothing to do with the crowd, and I don't think it had anything to do with the Knights as a whole. I think the Caps were the better team, and they hoisted the cup.
Yeah, and I get the saltiness out there, but you got to consider the scenario. It's 3-1, Vegas down. Not to say that Vegas fans shouldn't have shown up, but with the ticket prices, $800-900, $1,000 a seat. I mean, it's hard. If I'm a Caps fan, I'm paying whatever I can. If I'm a diehard Caps fan, I'm going to pay $1,200 a seat. I paid 4 figures to see the Cubs in the World Series a couple years ago. You'll pay that to see your team play. So I don't blame Vegas fans. If somebody's upset about the atmosphere in T-Mobile Arena today. Back to Carolyn, native here. My grandfather was former governor O'Callahan. Yeah, Mike O'Callahan. Is that right? I guess so.
I went to Mike O'Callahan Junior High School. Man.
All right.
First 2 years it was open.
Pretty small community. Vegas is a big city now, but we know it's a small community. So thanks, Carolyn. But we remember your grandfather for sure. Let's see here. Just scrolling through the comment here. My husband is Italian. Great. Love Italians. And this is his first experience with hockey, and now he's a fan for life. I'm sure he talked with his hands a lot like my dad did. If you saw my father, man, game 5 was an episode with him. I've learned to tone down over the years, Maddie. I know you get fired up. I used to get fired up. I mean, I was fired up tonight. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit easier for me to stay in check and I was just staying positive. I think the F-bomb came when they lost the 3-2 lead. Then I think I started swearing a little bit.
It's funny because I'm sitting there with my wife and my son and my daughter, and the first goal went through, and I'm like, we're done. Like instantly, we're done. Playing from behind again. Then they tie it. Then Ovechkin gets the goal, and I went, oh, come on. I mean, that's their storybook on that side, right? Ovechkin gets the goal, and then the Knights come back and 3-2, and I'm feeling confident, and everybody's happy in the house, and I finally took time to make dinner because I couldn't breathe for 2 hours and got that taken care of. And then the lead slips away, and it was more quiet frustration than anything from everybody in the house. After the game, and I actually tweeted it out, my son was in tears. My daughter literally went out back and sat in a chair by herself to be alone. And I don't think me and my wife said 2 words for about 20 minutes. I mean, it was a lot of just kind of quiet reflection and heartache and staring at the television and watching them skate around with the cup. And that's frustrating. It's frustrating to lose. And this is coming from a Dodger fan who just saw them lose at Dodger Stadium in Game 7, not, 6-7 months ago. So it's been a frustrating, fantastic year, to say the least.
Sarah Owen says, haha, you sound like Grandpa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, so quick little backstory on it. Sarah's my sister. We grew up, obviously she's born and raised here too. We grew up going to the Thomas and Mack. Thomas and Mack opened when I was 5 years old, 6 years old. And we used to sit in the top row of the Thomas and Mack Center to watch.
Yeah, I sat in the top row too, man. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you did back then, because it was $18,500 for every game. And you had me, my grandfather, my sister, and my dad. And this is basketball where everybody scores nonstop throughout the entire game. And it could be 6-2 in the first 2 minutes, and my grandfather's arms are folded, and that's it. It's over. They're done. So I learned it at a very young age to have that pessimism right off the bat, and it hasn't gone away.
Yeah, I got a Cubs fan. You're looking at me. I just no hope. You never had any hope. But I think about when you talk about crying in your house. My son's 5, so he's into it, but he's not that into it yet. He will be within the next couple of years, which is going to be awesome. My daughter's 15, so she's not that into it. She's a little dramatic about it. Loves going to games, but, she's 15. She's moody, so, it's kind of like if it doesn't catch her attention. But in my household, growing up, Bulls, Pistons, when the Bulls always lost to the Pistons, or they lost to, I think, the 76ers one year, my brother was in tears all the time. He couldn't handle it. So I know that feeling of maybe I was upset, but I didn't cry. My brother was bawling his eyes out. I know that feeling too, and that's a brutal feeling to get over. And the only way you get over it is to go to the next season and start winning. And next season, it's going to be here before you know it. So we mentioned it before, Matt, but again, there's so much to really look forward to next year, and the team's only going to get better. Now, the question is, are they able to rekindle the same magic? Because there's no question there was some magic in this year. They did have some luck. They had some bounces go their way. Eventually, those bounces gave way early in the year to just sheer talent and speed. There's no question. Now, do they pull the Blackhawks and go from playoffs to no playoffs the next year? Don't know. No. This is a playoff contender for years to come, right? Unless something happens, even if Marc-Andre Fleury were to go down for an extended period of time. If you still have Malcolm Subban in that, I think you're still talking about a playoff hockey team here.
Well, here's the positive that they have going that, somebody like the Blackhawks doesn't, where they're paying, a guy like Evander Kane, $1 billion, right? I mean, it's just insane.
Well, yeah, it's 3 guys take up their whole set. It's Taves and Kane and Crawford, and their 2 defensemen. So 5 guys take up their entire salary cap, which we know Vegas does not have that problem. So it is a different scenario for sure.
They don't have that problem. They have $30 million roughly in cap space, and they have the luxury of putting this entire team together and now sitting back and analyzing that and seeing exactly where their holes are. And they have the ability, they have the money to go out and fill those holes with quality free agents that are most likely going to want to come here. Even if they don't all want to, you can get a couple of guys to come here to fill some of those needs and just improve what is already a really good product on the ice. There's going to be change. It's going to be hard for a lot of people to take right off the bat because they have their favorites. Everybody is so connected to this team. This team has meant so much to this city. But you are going to see guys like possibly Perron and possibly James Neal, maybe a couple defensemen. You're going to see some of these guys go. And while that'll be tough to see, wait until you see the finished product and the quality guys that you're going to get coming in. This is going to be, in my opinion, an improved team as far as on ice ability going into next season. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to score 109 points
Right.
next year or that they're going to automatically win the Pacific, but I think they will have a more talented roster from top to bottom next season.
Yeah, no question. And again, you got to think, and I leave it up to George McPhee. Who does he want to keep? Who does he not want to keep? But I think, you look at one of those guys. I think you can keep maybe if you want Perron and you want Neal back. And depending what happens with William Karlsson, certainly he's probably the priority. Unless somebody offers him $10 million a year, he's probably staying a Golden Knight. But, one of those guys, again, talking about Neal or Perron, they might take a discount, if we want them back, if McPhee wants them back, and they want to be part of something special here. I mean, the team and the city have built a bond that really, I don't think can be broken in a lot of ways, and I don't think dollars can break it unless, again, you're talking about William Karlsson, and it's just a blockbuster kind of deal. I don't think that bond can be broken for all these players. I don't think they leave over $4 or $5 million. I think they would want to be part of what they built here and started here, right? To come up to the Stanley Cup and come up short.
I think the biggest one is James Neal because he's going to be looking for that long-term contract, which will be the last long-term contract most likely that he signs in his career. He's not a young player. He's in his 30s now. He's going to be looking for that probably 6-year deal, paying him top dollar. So I think he may be the toughest one to sign. I don't know that he'd be willing to take a hometown discount when he's looking to get that final big payday in his career. But let's hope Karlsson gets signed. I think, like you mentioned, that is the priority. You want to. He's young, kid. He's only 25 years old, just coming into his prime. Finally got an opportunity to be a top line center, and we saw how great he was with 43 goals on the season. Maybe not 100% in this final this season. He just didn't seem like himself. He wasn't as fast. He wasn't as good on the puck. Not as strong on the puck. And I don't think he scored in the entire series, did he? So maybe in the first game, I forget. But just didn't look like himself. But he's definitely a priority. He's a guy that you have to bring back. I think you need to keep that top line together. Smith and Marchessault along with Karlsson. They were so good. They were the best plus-minus line in the NHL this season. I think you got to keep them going.
Yeah, I think Karlsson did score in Game 1 again. Short-term memory loss. We discussed it earlier. We're late 30s, Matt, not mid 30s. So we can't remember anything. Robert, bringing up get Erik Karlsson. We talked about that. Certainly bolstering the defense. If you're hopping on late, bolstering the defense clearly, as we saw in the Stanley Cup final, was the number one priority. Brian commenting what players are going to be on next year's team. We addressed that. Victoria Russell, keep Tuck. No question, Alex Tuck is not going anywhere.
Tuck's
Again,
not going anywhere.
You've got these young guys. And who's the free agent, right? So Ryan Reeves is a free agent. Spiza is a free agent. These are the guys that we haven't mentioned yet. Again, William Karlsson is a restricted free agent. James Neal is a free agent. Derek England, we know, has signed on to next year. I'm trying to think about who else. Perron. Who else might be on that list? I think that's 5 for sure. Reeves. Does Ryan Reeves come back next year? Do they re-sign him?
I don't think so. I don't think they bring Reeves back, and unless I don't. What's Carrier's situation?
He might be another free agent as well. He might have been another one and done guy.
So who knows? I mean, Reeves seems to like it here. The guys like him in the locker room. So it may be a question of who do they keep, who wants to leave, things of that nature. I mean, there's going to be some turnover. I think the top 2 lines probably not a ton of turnover, with the exception of maybe Neal. But, yeah, Tuck's 21, 22 years old. There's no way they let a guy like that. They're not going to make the same mistake that Minnesota made in letting Tuck go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll dive into that. I mean, certainly we can actually do our research and maybe not we're just kind of surface looking at the team here for that next year. I'm sure in the coming months we can deep dive into this, because now, again, we have a major league team that we can talk about year round. And this offseason really is going to be short, as we keep on talking about. So we'll break down the draft, we'll break down free agency, and then soon enough, training camp will be opened up, and maybe one of these other young guys like a Cody Glass or like a Nick Suzuki impresses, just like Shea Theodore did and Alex Tuck did in the first year of camp. Marcus Mitchell, if this was our worst season ever, first, I guess you could look at it, best and worst season ever in year one. Can't wait for our next season. Vegas Strong, again, let's start the hashtag Cup and Two. Our friends from Sinbin doing the Cup and One hashtag. Let's say Cup and Two.
Yeah.
Robert saying Reeves is most likely gone as well. Yeah, agree with that. Oh, sorry, lost the comments there. Anyone know why Reeves didn't play? Yeah, they were just shaking it up, Carolyn. They were just looking for some magic to get Will Carrier back in the lineup.
They needed to be faster. They needed to get faster, and they needed to be more offensive-minded. As poor as the defense was playing, they weren't crisp on offense. And Carrier is a better offensive player than what you get from Ryan Reeves. They play very similar styles. They're both heavy guys. They'll both put you into the boards. They're not afraid to shy away from a fight. But I think Carrier brings a little more of a skill set to him as far as offense is concerned, and he's a little bit of a quicker skater as well. So I think they're just trying to improve that fourth line's offensive ability, even though they had been pretty good on offense. They needed to make a difference. And then Carpenter sat as well. He was a healthy scratch, and they put Perron on that third line, and it worked pretty well. I mean, Perron was part of that goal with flying into the net or getting shoved into the net, where not only the puck scored, but Perron scored as well. So. Gallant made moves that, for the most part, were the right moves throughout the entire course of the postseason. They just got beat by a more skilled and more aggressive team in the final, and that's really all you can say about it.
Yeah, this is good for the grieving process, isn't it, Matt? Isn't it? I don't know what the 7 steps of grief are or whatever it is.
It's extremely therapeutic to do these after losses. They're fun. Everybody has a great time after wins. After losses, this is more therapeutic than getting on Twitter and ranting for 2 hours. So.
I want to, why don't we, and not us, but I'll put it out to people watching right now. Please comment. I want to talk about a couple things, Matt, before we get to that. But start commenting just favorite moment from the season. I mean, there's a lot of them. I just want to know what your favorite moment was, whether it was a game or, whether it was the home opener or the 4 goals in 10 minutes in that first game, whatever it is. I want some comments. And then, Matt, I want to ask you before we give our favorite moment. Robert commenting, is Tatar sticking around? Yeah, Tatar signed for the next 4 years. And then Brian asking about Marcia Show. Is he going to stay next year? Yes. So those 2 are locked in. Again, there's not too many. There's not too many players. The 2 biggest playmakers that you have to look at that may not be back next season are Perron and James Neal. Fleury is signed for 1 more year. I think you got to think about signing Marc-Andre long term here. Hopefully he's open to it. I saw a story the other night with his wife saying how much they love Las Vegas and how unreal it's been for them. I think you lock him up for another 3 or 4 years, make it his last contract. Or maybe he's like Marty Brodeur and plays effective hockey till he's 40. Hey. Who knows? But it seems like he should be a priority too as well. I wonder what those conversations are like. I don't know what it typically is in hockey if you have a marquee goalie going into the final year of his contract, if you re-sign him before that happens or not.
Yeah, I think Fleury you have to keep. I mean, if for no other reason, because you have guys like Dansk and Subban coming up, who these are talented guys. And we saw when Fleury went down. Fleury goes down for, 25 games, I think it was, and this season could have unraveled just in the blink of an eye. And instead, guys like Subban and Dansk step up, and even Legacy and Ferguson, who got a little playing time later on, they step up and they hold down the fort. They were able to play better than 500 hockey during that stretch. These are a couple young, talented goalies, and who better to learn from than a guy like Fleury, who not only on the ice and his amazing ability and his willingness to throw his body around, but such a class act off the ice. I think that's one of the, not answering your question about favorite moment of the season, but one of my favorite moments off the ice during the season was getting to understand and know the personality of Mark Fleury. He's just such a quirky guy, and he gives you fun answers a lot of times, and He's got a little, that funny sense of humor that'll come through. That unless you're standing right in front of him, you might not pick it up. But great guy to be around in the locker room. A lot of fun and ultimate competitor, man. You could tell the difference between a win and a loss when you talk to him. He was not a happy guy after losses.
The final post-game transcript coming in my email, so I'm going to look at that here and skim it and give you guys some quotes from Gerard Gallant and some players. But, let's kick it off because we've got the comments rolling in with Kathy Coam. I hope I'm saying that right, Kathy, but it's a big moment, and this is great that we're kicking it off with this one. Theodore with 2 seconds in regulation to beat the Lightning. Boy, that was in December, right, Matt? I mean, that's when you knew. That's when you knew this team was
December.
For real.
Yeah, that was one of my moments. Thinking back, that's one of the first ones that popped into my head because at the time, the Lightning were the top team in the East, and the Knights were right there in the top of the West. And we were still wondering how good are the Knights. I think we all felt that this was a great team, but you didn't quite know how good they were. And then the Lightning came in, and that was I think it was 2-0 Lightning, and then the Knights score 3 in a row and take a 3-2 lead. The Lightning tie it with about, I want to say 6 or 7 minutes left in the third. And then on a late power play, they dig the goal out of the corner, kick it over to Shea at the point, and he drills it home with 2 seconds left. And you talk about the roof coming off of T-Mobile. That was an amazing moment.
Yeah, this team is good. I mean, I think that's when it really solidified for me, right? At that moment, it was like, this is a playoff team. Why are we arguing about this? Why are we arguing about whether or not this team can make the postseason? I think that really solidified it.
Because we have Tony on the show. That's why we argue about it.
Yeah, saltiness. Again, thank God he's not on these things. We'd be screaming and yelling at each other, and Tony would be, ha-ha. Yeah. Caps and 6, right? You were wrong, Tony. Tony said caps and 6, so he's wrong. He's
always wrong.
Yeah. Robert saying favorite moment was going to the expansion draft. Watching that roster fill up was awesome. It was awesome, but I will say this because I was there. I'm sure you were watching, Maddie. I was there. And I knew nobody on that roster. I said, I only know Marc-Andre Fleury, and I'm looking, I'm the rookie GM, like extremely rookie GM, looking at draft lists and saying, why didn't they get Dustin Brown from the LA Kings? Why didn't they get this guy? Why didn't they get this guy? Come on, he's available. He's a name that I know. There are a few names that just had no clue about anybody except for Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm like, who's this guy? He hasn't even played in the NHL. I mean, it was like that for me.
I recognized plenty of names, but probably couldn't tell you 5 things about most of the players. Yeah. I was in the same boat. I was not, I followed the Kings enough to be a Kings fan for years and years, and that was as far as it went. Hockey was always the fourth sport for me, just like it is for the nation in general. But man, we know the players now, don't we?
So favorite moment. I have 2. Is that okay? I mean, I guess we have time. Yeah. I'm like falling asleep talking about this. Yeah, it's getting late, but that's okay. It's late Chicago time.
Yeah,
anyway.
You're Chicago time.
Yeah. 2 moments. One was meeting Bill Foley and getting to know Bill Foley, and I got to know him pretty well early on in this process, and it was just one of the. You think about your typical sports owner, and this guy was not it. He was likable. He was affable. He loved talking to you. And I got to know him like on a relatively personal level. I don't really see him that much anymore, but I got to know him before the ticket drive leading up to, and I remember this well, we got some access behind the scenes the day that the NHL decided to grant Vegas a franchise. And I was hanging out. It was me, Bill Foley, and his attorney in some back room at the Bellagio before the announcement. And we were just kicking back, just chit-chatting. Bill, how'd you, can you believe it's finally here? And it was just BSing, so matter of fact. And that was probably, the number one moment for me was just seeing this thing go from nothing to that and really getting to know Bill.
Yeah.
And then number 2 was the first day of the playoffs against the LA Kings. I walked up and down Toshiba Plaza and the park and just saw everybody wearing Golden Knights gear. And I wanted that so bad as a Las Vegan for so long to have that sense of community and that sense of culture. And if you've been following my rants on Twitter about signage around town, it's for that reason. It's just that sense of pride and that sense of community that we really don't have here in Las Vegas that we finally found with this Golden Knights team and through tragedy too. I mean, we have to point that out. But those 2 those two moments, again, just that before the game against the LA Kings, game one, and just meeting Bill Foley and hanging out with him, those are my two favorite moments from the year.
Mine, I'll give you two also. Obviously, game one, and again, I mentioned it earlier, it had nothing to do with, and I take nothing away from as incredible as the ceremony was and how heartfelt it was, and the 58 seconds of silence and everything that went into that with the first responders and everything was amazing. But for me, just seeing a Vegas team come out onto the ice representing my city that I'm born and raised in, that I love more than anything, to see our team come out onto the ice for the first time was, I mean, one of the highlights of my sports life, honestly. And it had nothing to do with what the result of the game was going to be. It was just the fact that I was in Vegas watching a pro team that represented my city. I thought that was just an absolutely amazing thing. And my second favorite moment was actually on a loss, if you can believe that. It was Ottawa Senators game, and Senators, Carolina Hurricanes game. And me and my son
Shootout
went.
loss. That was a shootout loss, right?
It was a shootout loss. It was the only game that I went to with my son where it was just him and I. Went with him and my dad, and went with him and my wife and my daughter, and went to plenty of games with everybody. But it was the only game of the season that just me and him went, and we sat under the castle, like 110, what is that, 119, somewhere in that area, right in the front row, right behind the net, and just great view of the game, and just had a blast. It was just me and him. He wore my old Las Vegas Thunder jersey, if you can believe that. Wore the throwback Thunder jersey, and it's still my profile picture on Twitter because it was just so cool to be sitting there with him and have that Thunder and the Knights jersey, and just kind of, again, representing that generational Vegas thing that we have in my family, where he's now fourth generation. Shootout loss, we still got a point in the regular season. You can handle that, but it was just a lot of fun to experience that with him and know that, again, it's our team, right?
Tiffany chiming in. The game I took my father-in-law to, and this is funny. My father made an appearance earlier. We've been going at this, I don't know, for a half hour now, Matt, but my dad hopped on the Facebook Live here in Chicago a little earlier. But Tiffany's saying the game I took my father-in-law to when the Knights played the Hawks and beat them. They beat them 3 times this year. He wore his Blackhawks jersey, and I wore my Knights gear. That was awesome.
Nice.
My dad did a complete turn. My brother did a complete turn. It was great. I was on board since the word go, right? My brother was not. He said, forget it. They're not going to be any good. I'm a Hawks fan. And then my dad, I don't blame. My brother was Vegas born. My dad, born here in Chicago, he wasn't as, ready to jump ship. But once he saw the ship sinking in Chicago and his Blackhawks getting smoked, that game that we took him to, that was a lot of fun. And now, again, he was swearing up a storm. So he's a full-on Golden Knights fan now, which is a lot of fun. And, here in Chicago, again, my family, is my family, but they've been watching this story, too, out here. The country knows what the Golden Knights have done. And, the pessimistic Italians that we are, they all thought it was done after 3-1. I just refused to believe it, although they were right. But, they were all pessimistic. Well, it's great. Well, it lasted, but it's over. And I'm like, no, it's not over. They just need a win tonight. Yeah.
It's funny that whole, great while it lasted thing. It lasted just about as long as it could have possibly lasted. Yeah. They could have only possibly played 2 more games this season than what they did to finish it off. I mean, they were that close. They were in the Stanley Cup final. They're one of only 2 teams that made it there. Unfortunately, they weren't the one that won it all. But man, it lasted. It lasted as long as it needed to last. It was amazing.
Victoria saying, my moment is not a game. Going to see the guys at development camp before City National Arena was finished and going to the open practice. Yeah, that was at the Ice Arena on Flamingo Road, and all the kids were there. I was there for that, and yeah, there were fans there, but it wasn't standing room only like City National was. There were just people there like, hey, we got hockey. This is cool. I don't think it was, there were empty seats for sure in those bleachers. There were people there, and I'm just like, this is cool. I remember seeing Stoner's jersey, Clayton Stoner, and I was like, Stoner. And there was a few other names that were
You're such a
there as
child,
well.
John.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Stoner jerseys were pretty popular from what
Yeah.
I've gathered all season long. So that was cool. That's a great moment, Victoria. But you mentioned your son, and I brought my son, and you said the Senators. It was actually my son that I brought to the Senators game that they lost 5-4. And it was just great spending time with him. Right? Again, he's not.
Yeah, I had to babysit him for like 30
Yeah, that's
seconds,
right.
remember?
That's right. Yes, you did. I had to run up to the press box and get my candy. And I didn't want to bring Giovanni into the press box. Although the guy, Kenny, who mans the door, he's like, yeah, bring him up here. And I was like, no, I don't want to get in trouble to bring up a
No, no,
5-year-old
I'm
into
going
the
to make
press
Matt come
box.
out of the press
That's right.
box and sit and watch him for
come
5
out.
minutes.
And he
Yeah.
was good. And we got our candy. He wanted to leave every 5 minutes, though. So it wasn't the most enjoyable experience for me. But I gave him some candy, and he shut up for a little bit. So that was a lot
There
of
you go.
fun. So final thoughts for this, Matt. What do you want to leave it on?
Amazing ride, man. I'm sad it's over. Disappointed they lost, but I'd be sad it was over even if they had won the cup. It's been such a huge part of our lives covering this team every single day and going to practices and going to games and watching every game and just knowing that tomorrow or the next day there's another game to be a part of. And I feel like we're gonna have a lot of free time for the next couple of minutes, John. At least a few weeks, anyways. But man, it's everything we could have ever wanted in having a pro team, and to watch this city grow, to watch this community come together, and like you mentioned, seeing. I don't know how many times in my life I've been one of 5 vehicles on the road that's just decked out in whatever team gear, Raiders magnets and flags, and I had the Knights magnets and flags right away, and you didn't see it. Now it's everywhere, and it's awesome. It's awesome to be that city now, to finally have a pro team that everybody here can rally around, that everybody here has common ground with. Everywhere you go, it's Knights gear. Everywhere you go, it's Knights conversations, and it's going to be weird to have a little down period here where we're not looking forward to another game and another win and another goal. But man, year 2 is coming quick. I can't wait.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you, Matt. Like I'm a little burnt out on hockey. Like I've gotten to know you. I've gotten to know you pretty personally over the years, so I'm just
Yeah.
I have a lot on my plate. So not to that's just to say that part. I'm looking forward to resting up a little bit. But I know after a few weeks, I'll just be like, okay, when are the Golden Knights coming back? But I think about just me and my role, and you got a little bit of it too, just being relatively new, at least to the professional media landscape, but just to be along for this ride, Matt, to be part of one of the greatest sports stories ever, from literally day one, has been an honor and a privilege for me. And some media, it depends on the media member, you talk to, and it's a job for them. But for me personally, anything that has to do with my city of Las Vegas,
Hmm.
like I'm instantly passionate about it and I'm tied to it. Of course, like I'm passionate about the Golden Knights. But like I said earlier on, when they announced the ticket drive, I was there immediately. Like, what can I do? What can I do to
Yeah.
help this team be successful? And that's always my mindset. Tony can bag on me and other people can bag on me too about me being not the typical media member. When it comes to Vegas, I am not. I am pro Vegas all the way because it's my city, it's my home, it's the city I love so intensely. And to just again be a part of this in my own little way from the beginning is something that's going to take some time to really think about and reflect on. But I know a lot of people don't get that opportunity, right? So when I say I'm tired, like like I was burnt out, but not everybody gets to go on for this ride, and it was just
Yeah.
it was so cool to be part of this process, to from a franchise from nothing to what it is now, and that's a contender, a Stanley Cup contender. It was so much fun, and I enjoyed every second of it.
I'll tell
So
you what, John. I know a lot of people bag on raising certain banners if it's not the ultimate championship banner, but you could potentially see a couple of banners in the rafters to start next season. Both, obviously, Western Conference champion. I think you have to raise that banner. But if they wanted to, they could even throw a Pacific Division champion banner up there. And this team hasn't even had a full roster for 12 full months yet. It's been amazing. Everything about this has been amazing. Missed the cup by that much, but man, what a ride! What an absolutely amazing ride this has been.
parade, yes or no?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm
How I have have some kind of rally. Have everybody gather, whether it's the park or T-Mobile or somewhere. Just have something where everybody can celebrate this team and have fun and just enjoy this incredible season. But nobody wants to sit on a float and ride through a parade when you don't have the cup to raise above your head. I mean, what's the point in that? That's just it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. It's not what the parades are for. The parades are for the champion, whether it's Stanley Cup, Super Bowl, World Series, NBA. That's what the parade is for. Have a different type of celebration just to acknowledge how important this team has been to this community. Do that, but don't do the parade.
Yep, I agree. And at first I was like, yeah, absolutely parade, because I thought they were going to win the Stanley Cup. And then, of course you're going to have a parade. But you don't shut down the strip, and have them go, yeah, we lost the Stanley Cup. Like, these are guys that legitimately thought they were going to win the Stanley Cup. And I was reading through Gerard Gallant's comments. We had an outstanding year, but doesn't feel like it right now. Obviously, we'll get to that in a few days' time. We worked hard tonight. We competed hard, just couldn't beat that team. It was a good hockey team. They deserve the Stanley Cup. I mean, these guys are hurt over it. I don't think they would want to participate in a parade down the strip because they didn't win. They did a lot, but they didn't win the ultimate prize. And I know for athletes, being around them as much as I have and you have been this season, they don't want to celebrate finishing second place, unless you're an Olympian and you win a silver and that's like the only thing you won. Maybe you celebrate a little bit, but still, even then, you're probably a little salty about it. So, have a rally.
Make the celebration more
Go
about
downtown, right?
the team and the city versus a parade. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. Make it more about the team and the city and the community and everything that came together this season.
All right, shameless plug. And I say this every time, and I get what happens is that I get like a thumbs up comment on the page. Like I say, like our page, and then it's like a thumbs up comment. But what you need to do is actually click on, when we finish this video, just click on the page, the Sports Adrenaline Las Vegas page, and then there's going to be, scroll it a little bit, and there'll be a little thing that says like, and then you got to hit that icon. Don't like this actual video. Don't like the video, like our page. I think I'm saying that. CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Look at all the likes coming through now.
Yeah, exactly. Right, I know. Is that salt?
Also, John, we have Sports Adrenaline LV YouTube channel that you can subscribe to. Every video that we do, all of our shows, everything is posted there and archived there, so you can go back and catch any of those as well. And follow us on Twitter at AdrenalineLV, at Sports Adrenaline, at John Castanino, and if you really want to, at Tony Dasco.
Yeah, I was going to say, call in, please. We'll give the phone number, all right? So Saturday morning, I know, just roll out of bed, wake up. I know you probably don't want to maybe do that the first thing when you wake up, like put some coffee in your body, but call in and talk about how amazing this year was. We'd love some callers on our show. And you could be the first caller on Sports Adrenaline Las Vegas. We've only had one show, so it's okay. Nobody really knew that we were on. And I know 8 to 10 a.m. is early, but I would love a caller, just a bag on Tony Cordasco. So if I could get one wish, it would be to call the show. We'll put up the phone number somewhere.
Be our first caller.
Yeah, is that what it's going to be? Yeah, maybe I'll just randomly call in. Yeah. I don't we'll see. All right. Hey, thanks for hanging out, Matt. It was good. Again, this was good for the grieving process. And the likes that we got just now, those weren't the likes that I was talking about either. It's like literally after the fact, there's like a comment like, and it's just a thumbs up. Like, okay, like the page. I'm just saying, we're not all technologically savvy. All right, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to go to bed. It's after midnight. Yeah.
Enjoy your golf game tomorrow, John.
Thanks,
Have fun
Natty.
at Wrigley.
Hey, congrats to the Knights.
Right,
it's been a lot of fun. We'll talk to you guys soon.